The underestimated envoys, the massive trading station Nexus 7, stretched across space like a metallic city, its countless docking bays glowing with the lights of 100 different species. Today, it hosted the most important negotiations in recent galactic history. The Kepler sector had been discovered 3 months ago, containing 17 star systems, rich with quantum crystals and rare elements that could power civilizations for centuries. High Chancellor Vortok of the Dominion Empire stood at the observation deck, his forearms crossed as he watched the final delegation arrive. The Dominion controlled 43 systems and had the largest military fleet in known space. Beside him stood Ambassador Quelex, the insectoid representative whose species had mastered trade and commerce across the galaxy. A towering figure whose people had never lost a war, completed the trinity of power that had already decided how the Kepler sector would be divided. "Look at that pathetic vessel," Vortok rumbled, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been challenged. Through the viewport, they could see a small transport ship approaching, barely 200 meters long. Its hull showed signs of age and repair patches, and its engines glowed with the dull light of outdated technology. Ambassador Quelex's compound eyes sparkled with amusement. The humans send a cargo hauler to negotiate for territory worth trillions of credits. Either they misunderstood our invitation, or they truly don't comprehend what's at stake here. General Craxon's massive frame shook with laughter. "My scout ships are larger than that rust bucket. What do they plan to do? Haul away our generosity in cargo containers?" The human vessel docked with surprising precision, sliding into the designated bay without the awkward adjustments most civilian craft required. Within minutes, the human delegation had boarded the station and made their way to the grand negotiation hall. The chamber was designed to impress, with soaring ceilings and holographic displays showing the contested star systems, rotating slowly above the central table. The human team consisted of only 3 individuals, a fact that had already become a source of entertainment among the other delegations. The lead negotiator was Captain Alina Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a standard diplomatic uniform without any of the elaborate decorations or symbols of rank that the other species displayed. Her demeanor was calm and professional, but there was something in her eyes that suggested depths the aliens hadn't bothered to explore. Beside her sat Dr. James Park, a young man who appeared to be in his early 30s. He carried a simple tablet and occasionally glanced at readings that no one else seemed to find interesting. The third member was Commander Lisa Thompson, who had been introduced as a civilian aide, but carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of a veteran soldier. "Welcome, humans," Chancellor Vortok began, his voice filling the chamber. "We appreciate your interest in participating in these negotiations, though we must be realistic about expectations." Captain Rodriguez nodded politely. "Thank you for including Earth in these discussions, Chancellor. We understand the significance of the Kepler sector and are prepared to make our case." Ambassador Quelex leaned forward, her mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among her species. "Captain Rodriguez, perhaps we should address the obvious reality. Humanity has been part of galactic society for only 60 standard years. Your species controls a single star system and operates perhaps 24 interstellar vessels. The Kepler sector contains resources and strategic positions that require significant military and economic capacity to develop and defend." "The ambassador raises valid points," General Craxon added, his voice like grinding stone. "My people have been spacefaring for over 2,000 years. We have the infrastructure, the technology, and the military strength to properly utilize these systems. What exactly does humanity bring to this negotiation? Captain Rodriguez listened patiently to each speaker, occasionally nodding or jotting down notes. When they finished, she stood and activated a holographic display showing the Kepler sector. "Systems, we've studied the sector extensively," she began. "The quantum crystal deposits are indeed substantial, particularly in the three core systems. The asteroid fields contain rare metals essential for advanced manufacturing, and the strategic position provides control over two major trade routes." "Yes," Vorthok interrupted, "which is why these systems will be divided among powers capable of protecting and developing them. The Dominion will take the 5 eastern systems, the Quelex Trade Federation will manage the commercial routes, and the Titan Brotherhood will secure the military positions. We're prepared to offer humanity a small mining station in the outer system, far from any strategic concerns." The other delegations murmured approval. It was a generous offer, considering humanity's limited capabilities. A single mining platform would provide Earth with more resources than they currently extracted. From their entire system, Dr. Park looked up from his tablet for the first time since the negotiations began. "That's very generous," he said quietly, "but we'd prefer to discuss the 3 core systems." The chamber fell silent for a moment before erupting in barely contained laughter. Even the typically stoic General Craxon's mouth twitched with amusement. "Young, human Ambassador Quillex said, her voice dripping with condescension. Those 3 systems contain 90% of the sector's value. They would require massive defensive installations, trade infrastructure, and administrative capacity that your species simply doesn't possess. Besides," Chancellor Vorthok added, "those systems are located at the sector's center, surrounded by potentially hostile territory. They would need protection from species who might not appreciate new neighbors. What could Earth possibly offer as security for such valuable assets?" Captain Rodriguez remained standing, her expression unchanged. "We understand the challenges," she said simply, "but we believe we can meet them." General Craxon's patience was wearing thin. "With what fleet?" "Your single transport vessel." "Captain, I command over 300 warships, each one capable of reducing planets to asteroids. The Dominion has twice that number, and the Trade Federation controls the most advanced defensive platforms in known space. What military assets does humanity possess?" "Not many," Commander Thompson spoke for the first time, her voice carrying a strange undertone that made several aliens uncomfortable. "Just what we need." The negotiations continued for several hours, with the established powers growing increasingly. Irritated by humanity's refusal to accept reality, Captain Rodriguez asked detailed questions about mining rights, shipping lanes, and defensive requirements. Dr. Park continued monitoring his tablet, occasionally sharing readings with his companions. Commander Thompson sat quietly, but her presence seemed to fill the room in a way that made even the massive General Craxon shift uncomfortably. As the day wore on, the aliens' initial amusement turned to frustration. These humans simply wouldn't accept their obvious limitations. Chancellor Vorthok finally decided to end the charade. "Enough," he declared, his forearms spreading wide. "Captain Rodriguez, your species' ambition is admirable but unrealistic. Accept our offer of the mining platform or leave empty-handed. Those are your options." Captain Rodriguez looked at her companions, who both nodded slightly. She turned back to face the assembled alien powers, and for the first time she smiled. It wasn't a diplomatic smile or a friendly gesture. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal a carefully kept secret. "I appreciate your concern for humanity's limitations," she said, her voice carrying a new edge. "But I think there might be some misunderstanding about our current capabilities." Dr. Park's tablet began beeping softly, a sound that somehow managed to carry through the vast chamber despite its low volume. He glanced at the display and nodded to Captain Rodriguez. "What kind of misunderstanding?" Ambassador Quellex demanded, her compound eyes narrowing. Asterisk. "Well," Captain Rodriguez said, checking her own communicator, "you've all been operating under the assumption that the transport vessel you saw dock earlier represents the full extent of human presence in this sector." The chamber began to fill with a low, rhythmic sound. It started as barely perceptible vibrations through the station's hull, but within moments it had grown into something that could be felt in the chest and bones of every being present. It wasn't random noise or mechanical vibration. It was deliberate, purposeful, and unmistakably musical. Deep drums mixed with harmonic frequencies that spoke of power barely contained. "What is that sound?" General Craxon demanded, his scarred face showing the first signs of concern. Dr. Park looked up from his tablet, his young face split by a grin that would have looked perfectly at home on a predator. "That," he said cheerfully, "is the sound of our negotiating position improving." Asterisk, the sound of thunder. The rhythmic pounding grew stronger, resonating through every surface of the massive station. It wasn't just noise, it was music with purpose, the kind of sound that spoke directly to something primal in every sentient being's consciousness. The alien delegations looked around nervously as their translators struggled to process the complex harmonies. Captain Rodriguez, Chancellor Vorthak's voice had lost its earlier condescension. "What exactly is happening?" Before she could answer, proximity alarms began wailing throughout Nexus 7. The station's automated systems activated emergency lighting, bathing the negotiation chamber in pulsing red illumination. Through the massive viewports, the assembled delegates could see the space around the station beginning to shimmer and distort. Dr. Park consulted his tablet again, his earlier nervousness replaced by professional excitement. "We're getting massive gravitational anomalies," he announced. "Multiple contacts decloaking simultaneously. This should be interesting." The shimmer effect intensified, and suddenly space around Nexus 7 was no longer empty. Vessels materialized from nowhere, their hulls gleaming with technology that shouldn't have existed according to any known galactic database. There were dozens of them, ranging from sleek frigates to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even the largest Dominion battleships. "Impossible," General Craxon whispered, his tactical experience automatically cataloging what he was seeing. "Those ships, ... they're using some form of adaptive cloaking. But the power requirements alone should be ... should be what?" Commander Thompson asked pleasantly, standing for the first time since the negotiations began. As she rose, her civilian aide's uniform seemed to shift and change, revealing the insignia of a ranking military officer. "Beyond our primitive capabilities." The largest of the new vessels moved closer to the station, its hull easily 3 times the length of anything in the Dominion fleet. As it approached, the rhythmic drumming grew louder, and the aliens began to realize that the sound was coming from the ships themselves. Their engines had been modified to produce these harmonics as a form of psychological warfare. Ambassador Quillex's compound eyes were wide with shock. "Your entire species operates to dozen interstellar vessels. Our intelligence confirmed this. How can there be a fleet of this size?" Captain Rodriguez walked to the viewport, gazing out at the assembled fleet with obvious pride. Your intelligence was absolutely correct, she said. Earth does operate exactly 24 interstellar vessels for commercial and diplomatic purposes. Those ships are all accounted for and documented in your databases. Then what are these? Chancellor Vorthok demanded, his forearms gesticulating at the impossible sight outside. These, Dr. Park said, his tablet now showing detailed, technical readouts, are what happen when a species spends 60 years pretending to be less advanced than they actually are. The truth began to sink in as the aliens processed what they were seeing. The human ships weren't just large, they were technologically superior to anything in known space. Their hull materials seemed to absorb and redirect energy in ways that defied conventional physics. Their weapon systems were completely unfamiliar, and their movement patterns suggested propulsion technology that operated on principles none of the galactic powers understood. "You've been deceiving us," General Craxon accused, though his voice carried more respect than anger. As a warrior, he could appreciate strategic deception when it was executed with such precision. Commander Thompson's smile grew wider. "Not deceiving, General, simply allowing you to reach your own conclusions. When humanity first encountered galactic civilization, we made a choice. We could reveal our full capabilities and immediately become a threat that needed to be contained. Or we could appear harmless while we learned everything we could about our new neighbors. The flagship of the human fleet opened a communication channel, and a new voice filled the negotiation chamber. It belonged to Admiral Sarah Chen, whose image appeared on the main display screen. She was clearly aboard a ship that was functioning as a command center, surrounded by tactical displays and crew members who moved with military precision. "Greetings, everyone," Admiral Chen said pleasantly. "I hope we're not interrupting anything important. Captain Rodriguez, are the negotiations proceeding smoothly?" "They were, until recently," Admiral Rodriguez replied. "We seem to have reached an impasse regarding the Kepler sector core systems." "Ah, yes. The 3 systems with the quantum crystal deposits. I trust our new friends understand why those systems are particularly important to us." Dr. Park activated a new holographic display that showed detailed scans of the Kepler sector. But these weren't the basic surveys that had been shared during negotiations. These were comprehensive analyses that revealed information no one else in the chamber had seen. "The quantum crystals aren't just valuable for their energy properties," he explained. "They're essential for the kind of advanced cloaking and propulsion systems you're currently observing. Our fleet has been operating in this sector for the past 6 months, conducting detailed surveys and establishing preliminary infrastructure." Ambassador Quillex's mandibles clicked frantically as she processed this information. 6 months? But our scouts reported no activity in those systems. "Your scouts were very thorough," Commander Thompson acknowledged. "We watched them conduct their surveys while remaining completely invisible. It's remarkable what you can accomplish when other species assume you lack the technology to be a threat." The alien delegations were beginning to understand the full scope of what had happened. Humanity hadn't just surprised them with a hidden fleet. They had completely outmaneuvered every major power in the galaxy through patient, long-term strategic deception. Chancellor Vorthok was the first to find his voice. "What do you want?" he asked simply. Captain Rodriguez returned to her seat, her diplomatic demeanor intact despite the dramatic change in circumstances. "Exactly what we asked for. Originally, the 3 core systems of the Kepler sector were prepared to negotiate fair compensation for the other powers, of course. The outer systems contain significant resources, and we have no interest in monopolizing the sector's wealth. And if we refuse? General Craxon asked, though his tactical mind had already calculated the odds of success against the human fleet. Admiral Chun's image leaned forward slightly on the display. General, with respect, why would you refuse? We're offering a partnership that benefits everyone. The Dominion maintains access to the trade routes they want. The Quelex Federation gains new commercial opportunities. And your Titan Brotherhood gets to study technology that will advance your military capabilities by centuries. Dr. Park added helpfully, we've also identified several previously unknown systems in adjacent sectors that would be perfect for expansion-minded civilizations. Think of this as an opportunity rather than a loss. The rhythmic drumming from the human fleet had settled into a steady, almost hypnotic rhythm that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of every being in the chamber. It was psychological warfare at its most sophisticated, not threatening, but impossible to ignore. Ambassador Quelex was the first to break. Her species had survived for millennia by knowing when to adapt to changing circumstances. The Trade Federation would be interested in discussing partnership terms, she said carefully. General Craxon nodded slowly. The Brotherhood respects strength when it's demonstrated with such ... creativity. We would welcome the opportunity to learn from human tactical innovations. Chancellor Vorthok was silent for several long moments, his forearms crossed as he contemplated the new reality. Finally, he spoke. The Dominion has always valued species that can surprise us. Captain Rodriguez, it appears we have underestimated humanity's potential contribution to galactic civilization. Captain Rodriguez stood and extended her hand to each alien leader in turn. We look forward to working with all of you. After all, the galaxy is large enough for everyone to prosper. As the negotiations resumed with dramatically altered parameters, the human fleet maintained its position around Nexus 7. The rhythmic drumming continued, but it had subtly shifted from a display of power to something more welcoming, the sound of a species that had earned its place among the stars not through conquest, but through patience, intelligence, and the willingness to wait for exactly the right moment to reveal who they really were. Dr. Park made a final note on his tablet and looked up at his companions with satisfaction. I think that went rather well, he said quietly. Commander Thompson nodded, her earlier disguise now completely abandoned in favor of her true military bearing. 60 years of preparation, worth every minute. Captain Rodriguez watched the alien delegations huddled in intense discussion, already calculating how to adapt to this new balance of power. The real work begins now, she said. But at least, now we're negotiating from a position of mutual respect. Outside the viewport, the human fleet continued its steady orbit around the station, no longer hidden but no longer needing to be. The sound that had announced their presence had become the soundtrack to humanity's emergence as a true galactic power, not through intimidation or conquest, but through the patient application of intelligence, technology, and the knowledge that sometimes the most dangerous ship is the one nobody sees coming until it's too late to do anything but negotiate in good faith. The Kepler sector negotiations concluded 3 days later with agreements that satisfied all parties. But the real outcome was something more significant. The recognition that humanity had played a game of galactic chess that lasted 60 years, and they had just declared checkmate with a smile and an offer of partnership that no rationale species could refuse. The sound of those drums would echo through diplomatic circles for generations, a reminder that in the vast theater of galactic politics, the most dangerous opponents are often the ones who let you underestimate them until the moment they choose to reveal their true strength. Asterisk.